Alex, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I just want to jump right into it. I think what you're doing with Neurosity is absolutely amazing, you and the team. And I want to know what inspired you to delve into neurotechnology and co-found Neurosity.
Thank you. Um, I grew up in a family that there was like depression, epilepsy, things that were misdiagnosed. So I did grow up of like with this idea that the brain was a very sensitive thing, and it was like this black box, and it did have like it presented opportunities for families to suffer and grow with pains, and
Hmm.
that definitely I think had an impact on why I wanted to dedicate the rest of my life to like understanding the brain and help people understand their brains better, and even use neurotechnology to make themselves feel better.
100%. So I guess coming off of that, can you describe to me the core mission and vision for Neurosity as a company?
Yeah. If in 10 years from now, maybe 15, if we could have it our way, we would say that we cure mental illness
That's wild. That'd be great for me as well. Uh,
for billions of people, probably. Yeah, it's of
Completely.
course it's a big statement. We will most likely fail, but we're gonna try.
Yeah. Well, it's already exciting. I mean, what you're doing, which really brings me to to the crown itself. I mean, to the product. I'd like to know really just more about that in your words, and then we can expand on that.
Yeah, so the crown, it is an EEG device that measures your brain activity and is able to quantify high level mental states, like how focused you are, how relaxed you are. And with the software that we have developed, we have figured out a way that not only like passively track your mental state,
Hmm.
but give you a way to shift from one mental state to another mental state. For example, take productivity. You could go from being unfocused and unproductive to being productive. You can go from being stressed to being relaxed. And we do that with a feedback loop that uses audio that changes exactly how your brain responds in order to um, stimulates the very frequency in the brain waves that are directly correlated with those mental states. So we call that neuroadaptive audio. And our users are using it to be able to shift into focus, to meditate and relax. So we believe that mental health, let's say for an undiagnosed brain, the pyramid, or not the pyramid, but like the the foundational stack of a good mental health involves like productivity, so you feel that you have purpose, um, relaxation so you can rest, right, sleep, because without sleep you like the other two, it doesn't matter how well you're doing. So with those three things, we believe someone could be living a much healthier life when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely. Well, I think I, like a lot of people, discovered the Neurosity crown via your collaboration with Grimes. And I want to speak to that specifically. First, laying eyes on the product, I just thought it was just an amazingly cool looking piece of technology. And so I became
Thank you.
instantly interested, of course. So could you delve into how the collaboration between Neurosity and Grimes came about? And what was that process to create the custom brain computer interface for her?
Yeah. Well, Grimes she's a visionary, right? And I mean, one of her latest songs is called "I Want to Be Software." Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't get more futuristic and tech than that, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I believe she went to visit one of her offices in San Francisco. Um, there are many startups working there. I don't know exactly the reason why she was there, but she was there and she stumbled across some of our team members. She ended up trying the crown. I believe she liked it, because what I know that happened after that was that she wanted a custom crowning white. Keep in mind, we've never developed a crown of another color that is not just black, right? No one ever
Mhm.
has asked for that. You know what? Actually, people have asked for that, but if Grimes asks, you do it, right? So
Sure.
my co-founder, AJ, worked with other folks. And yeah, they basically, the first version was just basically just like taking a whole production crown apart, spray painting it. And then we took it to the next level after we had a little bit more time and actually got it into our production with the actual, Pantone color that you put into the injection molding that creates the actual end product that is like
Ah,
native, had the native color. And we have sent those. Of course, given the relationship between, I believe, Grimes and Elon Musk having a having founded a neurotech company, Neuralink, and the association of, like, we are a neurotech company. We are non-invasive. Neuralink is invasive. Of course, this was like press and a little bit of drama. Like the headlines, I think, was something like Grimes gets a custom brain computer interface from Elon Musk competitor Neurosity and whatnot. But what I really want to focus on is like the actual work that Grimes is doing and the really cool stuff that she has put out there. She took it to the MK Ultra Festival, and there was live brainwaves on stage, something that takes a lot of courage and an incredible tech team. There was um, one of the very good like engineers that was in the same office as Neurosity that they embrace, and he, with his experience with the crown, has helped them accomplish some of that stuff, of course, with the incredible tech team that Grimes has. So I did see a kind of like a preview of one of her music videos that I don't believe has been released yet, and there is quite a bit of white crowns in that video, and it's something that makes me very excited. Obviously, we created the crown with specific visions of like extending human autonomy and mind control, which we accomplished to a good degree, and then our pivot to mental health. But what happens when you create a platform and you offer all the data openly, you have an open source SDK, and you create uh, great documentation, like people will just take it and build stuff. So we've seen things like people summoning Teslas with the crown. We've seen people playing video games. We've seen people like just firing a coffee machine to create coffee. Just like people want to people understand that their thoughts, when they become real without their bodies, is a completely different experience, that it's really unreal to do it. Like the first time I scroll a computer with the crown, without using my hands, I was just like, wait, did that just really happen? Was that me? Like, so I think people, mostly the developers, artists, creators, they find something like the crown, and it just becomes a tool that allows them to express themselves in a completely different way that it wasn't possible, some time ago. So it's really refreshing to see all the amazing work that the developer, artists, research, and science community have put out, for sure.
absolutely. Well, that raises a number of interesting questions. I think the first of which being how you touched on invasive versus non-invasive implementation of these devices. And you had mentioned, of course, Neuralink. And Grimes also highlighted this, I believe. And I'd like to know, how do you think this non-invasive approach sets Neurosity apart from the other brain computer interfaces, which do take a much more invasive approach, which I also think is something that people think about when they think about their future relationship with these devices, if they're willing to take that additional step. But I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're building a neurotech company, regardless of whether it's non-invasive or invasive, you
Hmm.
already want to give humans pretty much like superpowers. There's no other way of saying it, right? You want to
Sure.
help people. Like it is much of a, like the what this technology can allow you to do, whether it's non-invasively or invasively, is like amazing to, you know, to an extent that, you know, you have to try to really feel it. But there are pros and cons to both, obviously. And I mean, to not state the obvious, or to state the obvious, an invasive company will require to drill a hole in your skull. They are more like semi-invasive that it doesn't require that degree of surgery. Nonetheless, some type of surgery that can be very scary to a lot of people. So the people who will benefit the most from using an invasive technology are the people that um, have much less to lose, and that it would enable them, it will transform their lives to a degree that the cost benefit, you know, allows them to really like want to try it. Like someone who, you know, could be like paralyzed from the hip down, someone that is not able to speak, someone that is not, they don't have mobility in their arms or hands, you know, like I remember talking to a developer after giving a talk, and he was in a wheelchair, you know, and I remember he came to me after the talk and said, "Hey, like I've been dreaming about, you know, using this technology," and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, this is something that definitely has a potential to allow you to control your wheelchair like with your mind." And what he told me just blew my mind. It's like, how did I think so small? What he told me was, no, I don't want to control my wheelchair. I want to control an exoskeleton. I want to walk, you know? So non-invasive technology will have will have a huge impact on people who desperately need a way to be autonomous, right? On the other hand, for the people who, let's say, have full mobility, you know, would they get a surgery if they needed to basically understand their brain activity and understand like the state of their mental health? Uh, that is yet to be seen, right? Like we need to see that. But could non-invasive technology touch 1 billion lives in the next 5 years? Right? So we are approaching the problem from the non-invasive side, knowing that it would force us to get creative in the way we image the brain and push our software to be able to deliver the best results without surgery. And that's when Neurosity comes in. You know, like we're the first brain computer interface that put a whole computer on the device. Like there's a 1.8 gigahertz CPU there, enough RAM to run machine learning. It has an operating system that we can send over the air updates, just like your iPhone, right? And state of the art, you know, encryption, um, and security. So there's definitely a lot to be done on the non-invasive side that hasn't been exhausted at all. You know, uh, we have crowns in over 56 countries. There are people that have told us like I cannot get to work without like using the crown for 5 minutes before I need to do something, right? You know, my mental clarity has improved tenfold. You know, like things that are not small. They are like really, they make a hell of a difference in people's life, like today,
Hmm.
not in a year, like right now, right?
Yeah,
So I'm very bullish on both industries or both different approaches to, you know, non-invasive and invasive. I want to see people walk, right? If that
absolutely.
requires for them to get a surgery because they need high resolution to be able to detect those individual neuron spikes, like, and they can get it safely. Yeah, I mean, that is a miracle, right? So
Absolutely.
that is kind of like my take on the pros and cons for between invasive and non-invasive neurotech.
Understood. Understood. And I think also touching back a little bit, I would like to talk about some of these applications as well, regardless of the method used. You had also mentioned some of the more kind of futuristic applications that impressed you were the ability, for example, to control even as something as simple as a mouse, utilizing just your brain. And I know a gentleman, I believe, also controlled his Tesla. So I would like to get your thoughts on these things and kind of how you see some of those future applications playing out specifically with the crown.
Yeah, specifically with the crown, when we needed to prove the efficacy of our device as an EEG device, we developed a program called Kinesis. Kinesis is basically mind control, and the way it works is that since the crown has sensors in every lobe of the brain, we actually have two sensors in the motor cortex, right here. This described that's the part of the brain that controls basically the rest of your body, right? So getting data from the motor cortex allowed us to use machine learning to train people that when they think of, let's say, moving their hand, even if they don't move their hand, but that thought, right, and that whole like all those neurons activating is enough. It produces enough electrical impulses to be able to be captured with our software and be detected as an intent, right? So that is what you're looking for. um, the complexity comes in when you want to do multiple degrees of freedom. For example, just scrolling down is just 1 degree of freedom. If you want to scroll down and up, that's two. So adding those different degrees of freedom can be extremely challenging, right? But we started with 1 degree of freedom. We were able to have the first version of the crown, a detect that motor-based intent in real time with almost no lag to like 80% degree. Just like many things in life, there is actually a learning curve, and there are people that are naturally, more inclined to be better at doing mind control than others. Like if you were trying to detect the intent of, let's just say, hit a ball with a bat, let's say a baseball player, right? A person imagining doing that swing will definitely produce a very distinct pattern versus the person who has not really been training for swinging that bat, right? So
Interesting.
you could train all sorts of different motor based movements, like lifting your arm, pinching, like jumping, even like doing jumping jacks and like biting a lemon. Turns out that like biting a lemon, like like if you imagine right now biting a lemon, you can almost feel what that sensation would feel like, and those neurons
Sure.
would activate, and you can train for that. So we had someone actually use that same intent to like fire up a very unique like workflow of like ordering a pizza. Like, okay, when I think about this is going to go with my automation in my Chrome browser. It's going to order a pizza from DoorDash. And you have examples of like countless examples of people doing really cool stuff with that Kinesis API that we developed.
And what would you say is the craziest application you've seen so far within that program?
For Kinesis, the craziest thing, I mean, there's nothing like moving big things without
Hmm.
lifting a finger, right? So
Magneto.
of course, like Arab summoning a Tesla with the crown, that's pretty cool and impressive. I personally done written some code to like launch a drone, like a small drone, and even like flip it. Like you train for that like rotation movement. Um, but there are people that have like control like tiny robots, um, video games on the screen. The other day, Wes posted a video on Twitter of like he created his own Kinesis software using GPT algorithms,
Yeah.
which definitely came out or were more readily available after we already had launched our own, which uses a completely different method. So he shows how he's able to play a game that has 2 degrees of freedom where he can go up and down and skip obstacles.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, the possibilities are endless. I mean, you can do all sort of things. You could program it that it lifts your desk, or brings it down. But to me, the most impressive projects are the ones that interact with the physical world, because that's when you
Yeah.
get thought to go into the digital realm, back into the physical world, and have an effect. I think there's nothing more profound than that.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping my head around this. It's absolutely wild to think about, and it raises some new interesting questions. Okay, so obviously the collaboration with Grimes as an artist was prolific, and I've always been a fan of her work. That being said, how do you see neurotechnology intersecting with contemporary art and fashion specifically?
With art and fashion.
Hmm.
Um, the About a week or two ago, artist Pretty Lights was wearing a crown on stage, and they were showing their level of focus and relaxation in real time, live, to like, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Yeah.
And when you give a peek about something very personal about you, about your mental state, and you share it with a lot of people, I mean, I think that's something very, very profound, because the artist could be performing, and not only they're giving you their art right there, they're also showing you how their brain is reacting at the act of giving you their art. So I think that's something incredible. I think this is something that is definitely going to become huge in the future, right? I mean, artists, the good ones, they to a degree just get naked in front of their audience to show what they're about.
Hmm.
There's nothing more intimate than the brain, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that is fascinating to me. When it comes to fashion, there are many applications that I can think of, right?
Hmm.
But if we just take the very obvious example of like how something looks on you, right? Couldn't a brain computer interface be communicating with a piece of clothing or textile or even like electronic ink to change based on something very, deep and primal about you? That is definitely something that can be done today with a few lines of code. So um, definitely can see the fashion world being like very into changing things in real time. So in a way, it's not that when the work is finished, it's done. Is that the work just changes depending on a set of circumstances and feelings. If we detect that you're in a down mood, shouldn't your body reflect that? You know. So I think we're going from like a hard coded world where you're wearing the music that you're listening to like a
Hmm.
near adaptive world where all those things can be different any given second because of someone's brain.
Unbelievable. Yeah, put into context, that's extremely fascinating. A neuro-adaptive world. Okay. So, looking at the roadmap then of Neurosity, because we're touching on the future, what do you think the next 5 to 10 years of brain computer interface technology will bring us, and how will Neurosity contribute to that vision?
For neurosity, well, the first thing that is very important to understand is that even though this EEG technology has been around for 100 years next year, we only have seen the tip of the iceberg. And the reason is because devices that are able to capture that data won't really be able to be used with real world applications unless they make the same jump that the phone did when they turn into a smartphone. They have an operating system, they can be updated over the air in real time. They have internet connectivity, they have cellular network, they have both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, all those things. The crown is about the only device that does that. Maybe there's another one out there that probably hasn't picked a lot of notoriety, but that being said, the important part is that you can order a device, you can put it on, you open an app, and you can do something as simple as pressing a button and say, I want to feel more upbeat, right?
Mm,
I want to focus, I want to be productive, I want to work on my mindfulness, I want to be able to just like manage my anxiety, like things that are impeding people from like becoming the best version of themselves because of mental conditions, of cognitive disorders, right? Like,
sure.
we are already tackling part of that today. So when you ask about the next 5 years, I think we're going to see that to another level where it's going to using neurotechnology is going to be essential for people to manage their mental state and their
Hmm.
mental health, because like pre-pandemic, like 1 in 5 people were suffering from like anxiety, and stress. And
Hmm.
post-pandemic, those numbers have gotten worse, and those numbers are underreported, right? Like, not everyone wants to talk about how they feel in a world that has a lot of stigma around it. So when it comes specifically to mental health, I think that's a killer app. I think that that's how people get healthier brains and like open up themselves to be able to be more productive and be creative, and just feel better. So that's something that is definitely happening today.
Okay. And kind of looking at it from the perspective of both product and technology, do you see Neurosity pivoting beyond EEG in the future? Are there any emerging technologies that you could see yourself implementing?
There's definitely a number of new brain imaging methods that we're very curious about.
Hmm.
We are, for us, it's not that important how we image the brain. For us, it's
Hmm.
very important that we can image the brain with accuracy and to a point that we can scale it and offer it to like a lot of people. EEG has been, you know, the imaging method modality that we have been able to embrace and deploy at scale. So we, I cannot talk too much about this publicly because we haven't announced it. There's a next generation headset in the works. It's 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 just mind blowing. It's like it's gonna make the crown look a little ancient. But like the future is very bright when it comes to uh neurotech devices. I mean, Neurosity, the crown is a third generation device that we developed. I think we learned a lot, and it feels that we like warmed up. So I think we're really ready to get this party started.
Okay, I'll be excited for that announcement whenever it is on the horizon. So I want to talk a little bit more in the abstract sense of the future, because I think your opinion on this is pivotal. So looking out even farther into the future, how do you envision brain-computer interfaces evolving over the next few decades? So we kind of spoke to maybe 5 years away, decades from now. What is kind of your vision for what this looks like?
When we're talking about decades, I think that's when things will really get insane in a really good way.
Hmm.
People will recover their ability to see. People will walk if they were not able to walk before. Um, it's going to integrate seamlessly with a lot of things are happening. Like, I don't know if you're aware, like there's an actual jetpack that someone could put on and with training like just fly, right? I think we're going to see neurotechnology, making an impact in, of course, more mental health, more ability, like motor abilities. We are limited by our bodies, right? And if you take the perfectly healthy human being, we have two arms, two hands or legs, we're going to get many more degrees of freedom. So, that concept of like multitasking is going to go to a place where it's going to extend our abilities to a degree that we'll be able to do so much more. And like if you start thinking about all the other technologies that are like happening, like self-driving cars and all that, there is a space for a transition where, let's say, if a truck driver that doesn't have a self, driven truck falls asleep at the wheel, with a device, detecting fatigue, can definitely alert that person, or like start like even getting the truck to the side, autonomously. Um, the future of surgery and doctors and the ability to diagnose, like the brain is the only organ in the body that it does, like, psychologists are not observing the actual brain before they diagnose you with medication. Like, think about that. Why is that? And like, so there obviously needs to be visibility into the brain. EEG has been used already in hospital for decades to, see like the effects of a concussion or epilepsy seizures. Um, so there's already even new research of like that you can use this technology to even like see where in the spectrum you are, right?
Yeah.
Or to predict an epilepsy seizure 1 hour before it happens. Like, that research was done and proven, is not making it out into the world just yet. There is a huge cycle of like science, product innovation, and we are about to start seeing all of that as the Neurosity, let's say, app marketplace evolves, and there are more applications, and there are third-party developers that, instead of developing an app for the phone, which we have amazing apps for the phone, are going to be developing apps for the neuro store, where
Hmm.
some kid in some basement is going to figure out how to use neurotechnology to a degree that I never thought of, or that any one of these companies, that have been using this developing this technology for years, have even thought of. Just like it happens with the phones, and how you can use a camera to do this, and how Uber figured out, how to bring drivers and people for rideshare together. So like like a lot of the innovation is going to happen just right in front of your eyes, just like it did when the iPhone came out and the App Store was launched. And I am very excited for that, and I'll definitely be there, developing more technology so people can like change the world.
So, do you envision an app store, for example, for the Crown, whereby you could effectively have all these various applications? So, for me, perhaps an example would be, and a point you just made, I place the device on my head. And as you said, I could even potentially find out where on the spectrum I am, for example, because it could achieve such accurate data that's not accessible right now to, general psychology.
Absolutely. I mean, we're building
That's
it.
wild.
We already have third-party developers that are making money creating applications for the Crown and offering
Hmm.
therapies for like anxiety and things like that. Like, it's already happening. And there are a lot of developers out there that are brilliant, that once they get a hold and access to this hardware and the SDK, like the possibilities are just endless.
That's unbelievable. So I suppose if someone were just to generally ask you on the street, they would say, looking at this technology, you know, what are the possibilities for daily interactions and experiences, things that don't require much effort? So, for example, just as you wake up in the morning, you put your phone in your pocket, you get your wallet, you get your crown or the next generation thereof. What might that look like if you can just kind of walk me through maybe, let's say, a 24-hour day, what that might look like in terms of using the crown or its next generation application?
Yeah. So let's say you wake up, you put the Neurosity device. It's almost invisible, even unnoticeable. you know, and we're talking years or decades from now.
It could be anything that you envision. I'm just very curious when there's a time when this is proliferated through society, what it could look like.
Okay, so if it's proliferated through society, you wake up, um, you already know how you slept with a degree of accuracy of, like, imagine the world before the thermostat existed
Yeah,
and people communicated the sensation of a temperature, and temperature wasn't a concept, right?
right.
We don't have that for the brain. We're starting to get that for the brain, and we're going to have that to a point where you're going to know exactly the minutes of high quality sleep you had during that night, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this device is going to work seamlessly with technologies like ChatGPT, and then the communication of it might actually be soundless. Like it might write back to the brain the information. So the speed in which you can get things done, and like maybe what you need to know about everything about the rest of your day, your schedule, your calendar, where you have to go, do you need to get like buy a plane ticket or whatnot? Like all of that could happen in minutes, without you having to move, right? Like if you had a co-pilot in your life, like that has access to the whole internet,
Hmm.
and you could interact with it at a very quick speed, what couldn't you do? I mean, if that's not a superpower, then like I don't know what it is. So I won't give you the 24 hours. I think I'll let your mind go wild, but you you can see how this is going to interact with your car, with your kitchen. You'll know even like how like you would probably be able to start like downloading information and skills, into your brain, assuming you have a extremely high bandwidth resolution device, um, kind of like the Matrix. I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but like you can write to neurons, right? Right now, the only way is with with invasive tech. Could non-invasive tech in the future be able to write to specific neurons? We don't know, you know,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't discard that as a possibility. So there, I mean, we've seen how science fiction has shaped the way technology happens. Like it is a cycle where people get creative, people write down ideas, they movies are made about it, and then that inspire other people who get creative and actually build things to make those things happen. Right? There are things like if you told someone 100 years ago, this is to just 100 years ago. If you tell someone 100 years ago, you will be able to see and hear your loved one right in front of you that is in another continent, right? And they will allow you to give you a way for you to buy food, you know, from there. Like, you will be like, what is this magic? Like, what is this? This is impossible. So we've been
Hmm.
saying things about the brain that are impossible, you know, what is going to happen in the next 100 years?
Absolutely. This is a superhuman device, just as you said. It's going to effectively evolve your ability to perform all sorts of tasks. It's very fascinating. So, of course, people are using artificial intelligence for the first time right now. ChatGPT is something you just mentioned, and there will be various competitors releasing soon. Are you working on any active integrations with ChatGPT, and what is kind of the future for Neurosity's integration with AI?
So the thing about when you put your platform out there and you consume your own platform and everyone has access to the same platform that you have is
Hmm.
that you're competing against everyone, right? So
Yeah,
like a few months ago, this person in YouTube created a video on how to integrate the crown and the SDK, which had GPT, and
yeah.
the video went viral, like over 1 million views in the first, like, 10 days or so. um, and it's not really up to us to do everything, right? You already see
Hmm.
people getting even ahead of us when it comes to that because the hardware is there, the SDK is there.
Yeah.
So I think the big question is like, how can you turn that into a product that is extremely intuitive to use, that everyone can use it, including your grandma, with very little friction. We have been using machine learning for many years now, but the way we're using AI, it is very different. Like, we're not even using a large language model, right? Like, what we're
Hmm.
doing is using something called reinforcement learning, which is basically an algorithm that you start rewarding or penalizing based on a goal, right? For example, the Neurosity app, like today in production, you go and say, I want to shift into focus, right? Then we get a reinforcement learning agent that has access to how your focus is performing, and it has access to modify the music in real time. And you say, okay, I'm going to change this of the music. I'm going to mix it and I'm going to add this, and I'm going to wait milliseconds or seconds to see how your brain reacts to it. Oh, it didn't work quite as well. Let me try it again. Just like humans learn, right? Just how you learn to ride a bike. And this algorithm continues to do that until it just understands exactly what your brain needs in that millisecond. And that's what we're calling neuroadaptive audio, right? So that is how we are non-invasively stimulating the brain without drilling into your skull in a way that humans have been using since day one, which is like sounds and music and talking and using um, audio. So that is one of the ways we're doing it today, and it's working really great. Like, people are loving it.
Fantastic. Well, you touched on something interesting a second ago, too, when we spoke to writing neurons. And that piqued my interest because I want, before we wrap up, I want to talk about an abstract concept. You see in science fiction, when people are uploading their consciousness, what they're effectively doing in some scenarios is they're placing a non-invasive uh, product similar to the crown on their head and then uploading their consciousness or downloading information, totally non-invasive. So that's a science fiction example, but I'm curious as to your thoughts of what the potential is for a future iteration of the crown to allow people to transcend human consciousness or kind of upload or download capabilities or upload their consciousness.
Define consciousness.
That's a good question. Tell me your thoughts and then we'll get into it.
I mean, that technology that you described, as cool as it
Hmm.
sounds, it doesn't exist today. It's not even clear exactly. Like, there are even some theories like that it won't be possible for the brain to fully understand itself. If you
Hmm.
start thinking about, like, you're trying to understand the most complex thing in the world, a brain has 80 over 86 billion neurons, and you're trying to use the same thing you're trying to understand. Like, it is a very hard problem, right?
Of
So
course.
when you're talking about things like the consciousness, with I would just simply call it right now, for the sake of this conversation, like the whole thing, like what the brain is capable of storing and evolving, right? It's very different from like changing a tiny thing of it, which is like a high level mental state of just like how relaxed do you feel, right? So when we're
Hmm.
talking about the whole machine, right? We're talking about and I'm calling it a machine, the brain, but
Sure.
it runs on 20 watts of power. 20% of everything you consume when it comes to energy goes to it. That is a very hard question for me, so I'm not going to even try to see how that would even be possible. But the way we get there, like anything in software, you break a very hard problem into smaller problems. Is that we need to understand every single aspect, and focus is one, relaxation is one, sleep is one. detecting trends in depression, which doesn't happen overnight, right? And anxiety and PTSD and alcoholism and Alzheimer's, like you start solving every single one of those problems. Every single one of those problems can take many years, if not decades. So um, I would just say, I would just slice that cake into a very thin, very small problem. Focus on that. That's what Neurosity is doing today. And we just might at some point get to um, a point where it's like, okay, we kind of know 10% of what this thing is, but the full thing, it's definitely a lot.
That makes perfect sense. That's articulated incredibly well. So that brings me to my final question, Alex. What's next for Neurosity?
What's next for Neurosity? Well, we have our third generation device on the market. Next year, we're gonna release our fourth generation device from scratch, very different, more powerful. Our software um, has been perfectly tuned to help you with your basic mental health needs. Um, we're gonna be helping people. We're gonna help people have healthier brains. I mean, that's the immediate thing that we're doing right now. Um, that's how we can help that mom that doesn't have enough energy to take their kid to play with their friends because something in her brain is not quite right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was me, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to allow that person with epilepsy to not do that activity that has high risk during seizures because there's already a seizure detected before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to help people just sleep better so they can be really present in front of their loved ones and their friends. Is a very human world, right? Like that's what we want to do. It's like we're not trying to make you more famous, richer. We're trying to get you to be have an extremely awesome human life as the human that you are. Just with another tool that allows you to just feel better and be better for other people.
Well, I love it. Well, I'm excited to see what you and the team have next. And thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me today. It was really insightful. I appreciate you, Alex. Thank you.
Akiva, I appreciate you too, and thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you, man.